He gets the black seat. I get the white one.
Good day, guys. So, yes, I'm Donatas Keras, founding partner of Practica, and we've been dedicated tech investors in Baltics for 10 years, and I'm very happy to have Helmuts with me here. Partners for 3 years, right? We happy investors in Sonarworks. And today we kind of wanted to touch on the reality of fundraising, and not probably to share the glory story of raising 20 million in one go and happy endings of things, but to touch the CEO and a founder perspective of, as we joked yesterday, eating glass while fundraising, and touching on these things, right? Because it's never easy. But before that, Helmuts, please just provide us a little bit background of Sonarworks fundraising path and what we experienced in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll not go into the technical details. For the context, Sonarworks is a deep tech audio company, so the key thing there is the deep tech. So that kind of sets us apart and sets the stage for us for how I have to fundraise. I've done 5 rounds plus 2 bridge rounds, so 7 rounds altogether, and 12 million total that I have raised, and this is not my overall not my first company. So that's my background. I don't come from a, hey, 2 unicorns in the background and I've done like super-sized deals, but I have some fair experience already by now, like 10 years of fundraising. Before we go forward, can you raise up hands who you are actually like fundraising and who are like CEOs or want to be CEOs or founders? All right, cool, very fair amount. And how many of you are doing it first time? Okay,
very
cool.
good,
very good.
So we got the topic right. That's good. So Helmut, so first question for you, right? So fundraising, is it your battle as CEO? Is this your struggle? This is your task, or this is a team effort in a company? How you take on that?
So this will very largely depend on the stage. So generally speaking, as you start out at the very beginning, it's all about the idea. So it's, you know, being able to come on a stage and kind of make a small show is part of it. It's part of like getting people enthusiastic. So it's more of a CEO can do much more at those earlier stages. As fundraising progresses into later stages, it becomes more complicated, much more stuff involved. So for instance, a lot more documents being exchanged, a lot more modeling being done, financials, you know, all kinds of documents for the due diligence, and then it's really a teamwork to manage that. And I think in this respect, very important aspect. So I'll say first fundraisers that happen largely on like the ideas and the prospects and the wishful thinking, which is, it has to be there. It's still kind of, it can be a one-man show, but later on it will get much more complicated. So now for the last fundraise that we did, it's a very, very important concept to understand that, like, when I go into this, I understand that that's a full-time job. So don't attempt to do it as like part of lots of other things that we do. And there is always this critical time with your team when you will have to go to the team and say, for the next 6 months, I'll actually not going to be a CEO. I'll just going to be fundraising. So you either have to have somebody left there whom you can, you know, who can take over as the kind of part-time CEO while you are fundraising, or you just have to like trust your team that they are going to do the job, and you just have to be completely off and focus on fundraising, especially in later stages when it becomes much more sort of engaging to do it. So that's, I think, is an important, at first you can do it, later definitely have to have a team. And then if I look at the team, I don't do it definitely alone. Very important help is we call it CFO, so, you know, you can call it something else, but some person that takes care of, you know, the financial models and all the finances. So that person gets involved a lot, because once the first stages of intros are gone, you can then connect your CFO to analysts in the venture capital firms, and then they can start working between themselves, because there's a lot of back and forth, and the CEO doesn't necessarily have to be there.
But that's probably later stages, right? right?
Yes, yes.
Starting from A round and going forward. Then we have
yes.
predictable business models
Yeah.
already.
At the beginning, you can do it. You can do it alone, and then I also get involved a personal assistant, because as you
That's already luxury.
that again later, if you have the luxury, it can, but it's important to understand that at some point you have to get it, because it frees you up, because even if you just look at the amounts of meetings you will have to arrange, like last fundraise I went through 240 investors, so that's my kind of contact list. So imagine like you have to arrange at least one meeting with 240 entities. So if you will send like 5 emails to arrange one meeting, that's like 1,000 of emails. So that's a lot of your time, and you are much more valuable to the company to focus on, you know, the things that add more value. So it's a good idea to bring somebody in who can actually work like immediately. Once the first contact is there, you can leave it to somebody assisting you, just setting up those meetings, because there are going to be a lot of them, at least from my experience.
How you involve your investors, advisors, your board, because this is the extension of your organization also, right? So in later stages, definitely it works. So what is your take on that?
Yeah. And here is one very important tip, general tip. Cold entries don't really work in VC world. They can work at the very, very beginning, but generally they are very ineffective. So the fact of reality is, if you want to get, you know, if you want to get, you start building a relationship with a venture capitalist, the best way of entry is through a warm introduction. And if it's a warm, like somebody enthusiastically introduces you, it goes a long, long way. And don't ask me why, but that's just how it works. Just accept it. So you have to get those intros. And of course, I understand, like if you are just starting out, it's like, okay, for whom I will get those intros? So who can introduce me to these investors that I'm targeting? So you have 2 friends there. If you have any investor already on board, because he is already on your boat, right? Good times, bad times, you are in that same boat. So he's on your side, helping you. So involve these investors a lot in order to make the introductions. That's the real thing you can scale up. The other one is other CEOs. So those I would say are more complicated, because CEOs in general are busy. So, but if you happen to know somebody very well and they know what you are doing very well and trust you, that's another point of entry. So I think when it comes to investors, this is probably the single largest added value that investors bring. It's sort of like, you know, like a game. You get them on board, you know, maybe then they discover that it's not so rosy and shiny as it was, you know, when you were pitching on the stage. But once they're in, you know, it's like a marriage, you know, you have good days and bad days, but you're on the same boat. So that's the time when you can really get them involved and actually make those intros. And those intros are a lot of value. So that's, I think.
And, you know, I just can double on that, right? That's, we as investors, that's actually, we do it all the time. I'm come to these events to meet new investors I can introduce to my company. So this is exactly the work we do. And warm intros works just because it helps get through the noise, right? It's just easier. It's easier.
Yes. This, I think this brings me to an important point where there is, like, as you see, there's a lot of show going on, right?
Yeah.
Like you go to these events and there's just show all over the place, like people making show on stage, and some of you being like founders might get intimidated by that, because you might not feel like you are that kind of showman. It looks like this, you know, you have to be really the showman on the stage that actually can kind of make things happen. Here's the real thing, like there are 2 worlds to this industry. There is the show happening in these events, and then there is the stuff that's happening in the back offices, like behind the curtain, where I would say the real stuff actually happens. And a lot of founders and investors and CEOs I know are actually, I'd say, geeks and weirdos. They're actually very common in the tech industry.
Abnormal people, let's call it.
Yes, it's very common. So what this tells me, and a lot of them are actually in the portfolios. So like we have investors, so we go to investor portfolio day, so we see the other startups, and then you realize that, hey, actually, when you go to these portfolio days, there are a lot more freaks than there were when the show was going on, like we have here. And I think the main point is, like, don't get caught up by this show. For VCs, it's a very tough business that they are in. They are in this for the business sake of it. I bet that many of them actually don't enjoy the show that much.
Partially true. I have to agree with that. Yes, exactly.
So that's a super important point. Like, don't get distracted by the show. It's actually not a show. It's like the real stuff that you do in the back office when you communicate with them directly. And here is a tip in terms of mistakes. Like, when I started out, I also didn't know how this whole thing works. So, when you go to your first conferences, is this energy, and you go out and pitch to everyone. And the mechanism that was in my head, you quickly, and probably I'll bet most of you have already done it, you learn that investors in this event have these green badges, right? So you switch on your radar, you look for green badges, and whenever there's a green badge, it's like, that's my target, and you go and pitch them to the hell. So that doesn't work, actually. You can just calm down. That doesn't really work. You can't really, I had this idea as well that I will go there and I will pitch it, and then it's almost that same moment this guy will take out a checkbox and book and write me a huge check and here you go, right? Golden buzzer. No, that's not how it happens. Biggest, one of the, the thing that one of the mistakes that I'm a bit ashamed of, I even pitched in toilets. You go into a toilet and you see an investor with that color badge, and you just want to see my idea, blah, 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 blah. So that just doesn't work. That's not helpful. It's actually harmful.
Helmuts, I got that in a nightclub in Vilnius, 2 o'clock, standing really drunk in the toilet, and a guy pitching me in the air. He knew somewhere. That was bad. That was fun, but then
Yes.
I realized how bad it is.
Yes.
At the end of
Yes.
it doesn't work.
So don't get distracted by that show. You might see that happening. It's not a good idea to do that. Focus more on the back office work. Focus more on understanding how investors look at those ideas, the checkboxes that they have to check, and they go by an algorithm in their head, and they have to check all those boxes. Is there a big market? Do you have a business model? Do you have a team? You have to check those boxes. That's much more important than your ability to make a show.
True.
Do you agree to that?
Yes, totally agree. That's right, and you're right. Let's go further. We have 5 minutes left and
Yes.
a lot of things to cover. Your process. What would be your advice for guys starting first fundraising? How to put the process in? What trips you use, and just simple things, workable stuff.
So again, the first idea, you will eventually, it's a lot about the price. So basically, you are in the pitching process, you are selling your company, and investors are eventually buying it. So you want to get what you're trying to do, you want to get a buyer, and you want to get the best price. So at first, you don't focus on the price aspect so much. Later down the line, after 10 years, you realize that, that deal badly priced earlier actually hurts me a lot now. So you will start thinking about the price much more. What drives price? Competition. So literally, that's the one thing that is your friend. You have to create competition that is going to enable a good pricing for you. Now, in terms of creating competition, that means you have to get a lot of that stuff happening, a lot of those conversations, ideally competing. Here, a quick question to you. Is there the FOMO effect among investors? Does that work?
Yes, exactly. And if process is right, meaning that, if the company managed to get a lot of investors, let's say in 2 weeks' time, and expect the answer or proposal in these 2 weeks, and as an investor that another 5 companies are chasing the company, of course, you're going to act faster. Maybe you will not increase, valuation or proposal, but you're not going to bring any strange things, right? And you're just going to prioritize the stuff. So it definitely works, right? Everybody's people, right? So you just want to get to the crowd. And as a joke, investors is just a crowd. It's just a crowd. You just follow.
I sometimes think of it this way, investors get pitched these crazy ideas for lots of fields, biotech, rubber, software, business processes, all kind of stuff. They can't be experts in all of that. So you will always have to rely on, goodwill or on what others think. So when some new idea comes in and you see that all your investor friends are this is the hot new thing, you're also hey, what I'm missing out? Maybe I don't understand something. So it works. So coming back to the process,
But this works just once. Yeah. You cannot compete that with the same company year after year after year, right? So this is also true.
Yeah. So now, how do you create competition? You have to get a process. What is the process for me? So first, I have to get all the pitch documents together. Let me quickly go through. Of course, there's a pitch deck. You most probably all know it. I do several pitch decks. First of all, an important distinguish, there's a difference between a presentation that you present and the material that you read. So don't use the same deck for both of those use cases, because on stage I can put just a picture behind my back and give you the context, but when you send it out, the people won't have the same context. So those are two different materials. So several decks, and I always custom them slightly. When I understand who I'm targeting, I will slightly kind of target it for that particular target. So then you have all the financials, the business models in the background, KPIs, demos, so you prepare all of that stuff. So then you have to create a contact list. Like, you have to actually understand whom are you targeting. Very, very important task, and that list that's the beginning of your funnel. So it's a sales funnel for you. You have to create a lot of, deals at the beginning of the funnel. So that means going out, researching who is relevant for you. Don't pitch to everybody, because you have to realize which investors are relevant to you, and then target them in your list. Quickly throw out those that are irrelevant to you in terms of like their focus. So you have to do your research there, and then you start a process of, you understand the process pipeline. So you mean that there's going to be like the first contact, I have to get the contact, then the first pitch, then the second pitch, then the demo, then like meeting the team, make out the process, and then follow through this pipeline like a normal sales process. So that process is important. If you don't have it, you won't have enough traction with investors to create that competition among them that eventually gets you to close the deal and get good pricing in a deal. So that would be my...
Great, I completely agree with you. This is not kind of single success. It can happen as single success, but it should be a process all the time, right? And a repeated process, and you're getting better and better in time. Probably last question from my side. European investors and American investors, right? You have both on board. What's the difference? What is your learning at?
Yes, huge difference. And the processes are very different from US and EU. If I think about how are they different, US is more, they have a more stricter sort of standard for how they do it. So there's like the Silicon Valley way of how they do it. Europeans are much more improvising and kind of on the way. So you get a lot more custom offers like from European investors. Americans are much more standardized. As we are running out of time, the single most important thing that I think I want you to take away, there is an actual book that just spreads it all out for you. It's called Venture Deals. I got to know about this book only during my last fundraise, and by that time I knew most of the stuff. So absolutely read that book. So it just covers everything there is about fundraising. And it's absolutely true. I believe like you also have that book.
I have two, and I give it away when we started companies to work with, especially when the guys are less educated, and because it's kind of like negotiating against yourself, but it's much easier, right? When the person know how to dance back to you, right? Rather than just...
If I would have to invent like a marketing pitch for that book, I would say it's the one book your investor doesn't want you to read because it really gives you a competitive advantage because you understand how they work. Exactly. But I guess Donatas is forthcoming, and he's actually giving you that book if you pitch him.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Helmuts. That was a pleasure to have you. Thank you.